Evening all, on Play Chess and Twitch TV. So I thought this week we could go back to look at games of Mikhail Tal, and in particular take a particular tournament as a unit rather than going around the place. So, and the tournament that fascinated me this week, to maybe have a look at a few games of Mikhail Tal, was the Moscow 1957 USSR Championship. So this USSR Championship was the 24th Soviet Chess Championship. Took place in Moscow from 20th of January to February 22nd, 1957. Held in a theatre attended by hundreds and followed by radio. The championship was significant due in part to the debut of Mikhail Tal. Because of his sacrificial style, it made a strong impression not only on the grandmasters at the event but around the world as well. So his style of play earned him first place among the very best in the Soviet Union. So in this tournament he got 14 out of 21. Okay, and I thought might want to slice this up into 2 weeks. So this week and next week, if we look at his games with black, and I think some of them we might have seen in the past, but I do want to put a different perspective on things that I might have commentated before. I want to look out for the trump cards which Tal generates from openings in particular. That's one thing. Because I think we would like to imitate Tal, but I think we need the right openings. So that's the important thing for me at the moment to think about. So let's have a look at this game. So Lev Aronson against Mikhail Tal. So Tal playing black, and we're going to look at his black games this week and white games next week if there's interest. So D4 from Lev Aronson. Sounds a bit like Aronian, doesn't it? But it's not. So 1957. So E6 from Tal, and after C4, actually this is going to be a shock. Mikhail Tal plays F5, Dutch defense. Wow. So okay, so it's thought to be quite unsound nowadays, but still sometimes played. So knight f3, knight f6. Okay, and he's going for the kind of classical plan in the Dutch defence. So bishop e7, which carries with it not d5, but we're going to see a plan of d6. Castling queen e8, and then maybe e5 later. That sort of plan. So we see g3, black castles, bishop g2. So d6, it's I think Simon Williams is a British grandmaster that plays this a lot, actually. So some GMs do play this. So it's Dutch classical territory. And now after castles, queen e8, it looks quite kind of directly aggressive, doesn't it, for the queen to come out to these points? Very directly aggressive. But you'll see off rook e1 that white seems quite prepared for e4. So I wonder how many of us in this position would play the routine queen h5, say. This is not what Tal played, but if we played queen h5 here, do you think that actually e4 is quite strong in this position? Because actually, e6 might be a target. Do you think e4 is worth stopping, basically? If I gave you 20 seconds here, what would you play as black actually? Would you play queen g6 or queen h5? You might imagine Tal going for the king more with queen h5, but no, I don't want to bias it. But if I give you 20 seconds here, what would you do? Try and prevent e4 or not bother about e4 from white? Okay, so there's some suggestions on stream for for e5. No, I don't think e5 is possible here. White's got e5 covered. But if you want to play e5, oh sorry, there's a what you said. If you want to play e5, though, I think bishop d8 sometimes played for e5. That's interesting to try and get e4 in. Bishop d8 protects c7 as well. So you know, I don't know. I think I've seen that before in a similar position to this. But actually, okay, it's not really a big deal actually. Well, maybe it is. It was certainly to Tal a big deal. He played queen g6. So I think he's trying to discourage e4. Yeah, he's trying to discourage e4, but it's played anyway. Okay. So is the queen really good here on g6, or would it have been better on h5? Okay, so Tal takes, knight takes e4, and we might be feeling some exposure on this e file surely. Knight takes e4, rook takes e4. And is this a misprint? Hang on, what's going on here? Sorry, what? Queen takes e4. Now, does that run into losing the queen? Queen takes e4, which wasn't played. I think in this position, I think there is a move winning the queen. Can anyone spot it if I give you 20 seconds? This wasn't played. Queen takes e4. But what move would be really good here for white? Yeah, I think knight h4. So Tal, I think, spotted that. There's no major sacrifice here. So I think the queen's got no squares. Everything's covered. So that's no good. So, but rook takes e4. White's achieved that aim of putting pressure on that e pawn then. Okay, Tal doesn't panic. He plays knight c6. Okay, white now officially protects the rook and puts more pressure on e6. Potentially, that could be useful. Bishop f6, bishop d2, and now e5. And black is actually ending up, well, he's opening up his bishop though, and it's useful, it seems, to play bishop f5 because that rook's going to be in trouble surely. Or can it do something? D takes e5 is played. D takes e5. And now white plays bishop c3 actually. Putting more pressure on e5, not minding bishop f5, which is played. Because white has in mind this move, knight h4. So this looks dangerous a little bit for black positionally. Because he's got the isolated e pawn and he's having to give up the dark square bishop. Okay, so this isolated pawn, and white's got these two bishops striking across the diagonals, and you might think here, but hold on a sec, also b4 b5 would be good, put more pressure on e5. Queen, I say, so rook e8. Okay, queen now e3 is played, which I guess puts the brakes on knight d4. That's no longer possible. Knight d4, just keeping control of d4 here. h6, and now b4. So it looks as though this is a good positional plan from white. So is Tal going to be cramped here? White's got these dangerous bishops and an isolated pawn here. Okay, so it looks dangerous. Queen f6, which potentially, well, the rook is also on d4, so b5 is possible because the rook's on it. So the knight stumbles back and we see check, king h8. And here maybe white gets a bit too ambitious in this position. He seems to actually have a very nice position here, but maybe he's a bit ambitious. He plays the move f4 here, and okay, this is quite interesting really. Yeah, I mean, there's other questions here. You know, could white have taken on a7? Okay, that's a question. Yeah, as mentioned, white seems to have a pleasant enough position, but You know, f4 does seem to have a tactical purpose though, based on this diagonal. Let's just run with this move that was played. Now, Tal took here, and you might think actually bishop takes f6 might carry a little bit of danger here because of this pinned pawn. So rook takes, say, or maybe pawn takes is stronger. Check, but there's bishop h7, isn't there? And then there's nothing. Is there? I don't think there's anything here. White's pieces are a bit loose, maybe. So, you know, after f4, e takes, maybe this was a bit of a blunder, f4. So e takes f4 from Mikhail Tal playing black. So he plays e takes f4, and we see queen d2. Now, clearly here, well, this is still really quite dangerous, isn't it? Because the queen's got to protect h6, surely. Well, Mikhail plays check, actually, and after bishop d4, he puts the queen back on g6. Okay, so still protecting h6. Queen takes f4, now threatens rook takes h6, because we've got that pin. So rook takes h6 as a major threat. It's defended with king h7. And now white takes this pawn on c7. Queen takes c7. So white still seems to be doing okay. But perhaps this is a bit greedy, actually. Maybe not okay now. Because now Tal actually, he gets a very nice attack. And I think this is the first key move here from black, which shows actually black's got a nice attacking prospect. So what does black play here? If you want to play chess, please can you go to the opening book tab to avoid seeing the next move. So if I give you 20 seconds here, can you guess the next move? But please try and hide your notation if you want to play chess. So 20 seconds. What did black play here? Well, I don't know. It's like the queen. It wasn't accidentally placed on g6. There's a good point. There's a good point for this queen g6. Bishop b1. Bishop b1, supported by the queen, locking the rook out of the first rank. Now threatening check. Bishop b1, and all of a sudden it seems quite dangerous. So okay, bishop e5, trying to shield the e file. Knight e6, attacking the queen. Queen d6. And of course, you know, the f file is dangerous. Queen f5, threatening mate. All of a sudden, white's in big trouble here. The tables have been turned, it seems. Bishop f4, trying to defend again. Knight g5. Very dangerous. Okay, queen b4 is played. Maybe trying to evict, you know, this bishop. Goes to e4, and there seems to be a nasty threat now of knight h3 check. So bishop takes e4, rook takes e4. White's really passive. He's gone really passive here. Rook on the 7th spells disaster, really. Queen d6. For a fleeting moment earlier, it seemed white was okay, and now look at this. One little mistake, and black's got all the attack. Queen d5, queen c2. I mean, it's a shame for white. It's a shame. He had the bishop there, and now look, his king's being blown to smithereens. c5, and only the queen's protecting g2. Okay, the rook's protecting h2, but to get the queen off g2, Tal plays rook d8. Okay, bishop d6, and Okay, so that maybe justifies white c5 to be able to play bishop d6. But now rook e8 is played, and here rook e8, well, it seems to have crushing threats like rook e2, and white actually resigned here. So I don't know, you know, one little mistake, he let Tal in dynamically. And it's almost as if Tal's king was a little bit in danger at some point. So let's have a look at this game again. I think this is just the crushing position. e4's under control of black. So rook e2 will just, you know, it's end of game, isn't it? So let's check this out again from the start. So a Dutch defence, which was actually very, very successful. Okay, so how on earth was this so successful from what looked like a dangerous position where tactically white's achieved a strategic goal to play e4? He's playing e4, you know, and tactically he's getting away with this. So this looks good, you know, at the moment, to get this break in. So how did black get so much play? Queen e2, and then we saw bishop f6. So bishop f6 got out of the way of d5, I guess, because, you know, that's a sitting target for d5, isn't it? So bishop f6, bishop d2, and then e5, which opens up this bishop. Take, take, bishop c3, bishop f5, and we saw knight h4. And again, it looks as though, you know, black surely is struggling a little bit here. So we saw now after h6 b4, and this knight being pushed, you know, this bishop's on this diagonal. You might think d4's under control. For a moment it looked okay for white. So where was like the big mistake intuitively? b5 looks great, check. I think f4 personally, f4 seems to give black some chances. So maybe white, you know, was better and just pushed his luck here a bit too much with f4. I don't know what you guys think, but okay, so f4 happened, and you know, this diagonal of course is weakened, so check, and that's made use of immediately, that diagonal, to put the bishop there, which is important in some respect. Queen g6, queen f4, king h7, and this rook is actually out of play. If you think, if its only purpose is h6, and that's the rook is out of play, and look at black's rooks, they're just ready to come in. This one is ready to come in, this rook's kind of misplaced, so something's gone maybe wrong here, and this doesn't help now. Queen takes c7, so bishop b1, there's a lot of threats now being generated. Sorry, there's a question. After move 21, isn't g4 a threat to win white's rook? So if we go back to move 21, okay. So you say g4, g5. Okay, so knight d8. Well, it's white's move. Check. f4. Oh, I see. I see. You're saying that f4 was to stop g5. Ah. Yes. Yes, that's why the mistake happened. There's sometimes a logic to what we call mistakes. There's a reason why f4 was played. g5. Yes, Unmus. So does everyone think f4 was actually played to stop g5? Because g5 does seem to be embarrassing the rook quite a lot. So I think we have to trace the real mistake earlier. Maybe switching the rook to h4 was the real mistake, and white's just trying to stop the symptoms of the rook on h4 here by playing f4. Oh well. Yeah, it's so easy to label these things as mistakes. f4. Why would white want to play f4 in this position and weaken the diagonal and open up the rook? If white was in his right mind, would he really want to do that? It's the rook, isn't it? g5 is the threat. Yes, thank you. Good point. So f4, it ruins White's game. White's game's in ruins pretty shortly. Yes. Okay. So maybe we can get some insights about engines, just intuitively. So White's king was just up for slaughter. And that was that. So let's move on to another game. Okay, great stuff. So now Mark Taimanov was a great pianist, wasn't he? And also he's one of the people that Fischer slaughtered on the run up to 1972. But you know, he was a great player. And so let's have a look. So Tal was black against him in this same tournament, the Moscow tournament 1957. So we'll flip the board here again. So Mark Taimanov playing white. Actually, yeah, why didn't we see it from Tal's perspective? Sorry about that. We should see these games from Tal's perspective. It's more fun. Okay. Okay. So c4, and Tal plays knight f6, knight c3, e6, and here, you know, we see a more sound opening perhaps than the Dutch. At least it's played a lot more at World Championship level. You know, the Nimzo engine. Rubinstein variation, e3 from Mark Taimanov. Tal plays c5, bishop d3. Tal castles, knight f3. And he increases the tension in the centre with d5. So black's not minding an isolated queen's pawn potentially. And nor is white, I guess. There's an interesting transaction here. C takes d4 is not answered. Well, there's an option for white to take on b4, which white takes actually. So he gets Tal's dark square bishop. So you might think, hold on, doesn't Mikhail need his dark square bishop? His remaining bishop's not that brilliant on c8 at the moment. Okay, so Mark Taimanov seems to have the bishop pair, of course. So how can Tal get an attacking position from this? What trump cards does black possibly have here from the opening to generate an attack later? Well, we'll see. So queen c7, does it have to be an attack though? So queen e2, and the bishop humbly moves to d7 here, e4, which actually, okay, it opens up this bishop, but white is giving up the d3 bishop with this move. And yeah, black's got the better pawn structure, as Jinmunda says on stream. Yeah. So d takes e4, takes, knight takes. So Tal's got a better pawn structure, and okay, it's got a slightly cramped position, f6. Okay, he wants to play e5 maybe again, and he's not too worried about the diagonal check coming up. So rook fd8, bishop e3, e5. So this bishop's okay. Check is played, king h8, queen d6, and it looks again. Isn't Tal looking for momentarily in a passive position? This has got a similar feel to it, hasn't it, than the game we've just seen, where his opponent is also now playing b5, you know, potentially kicking a knight back. And it was quite amazing that shortly after b5, black had a really vicious attack, didn't he? Well, in this position, the knight doesn't have to move anywhere because Tal can attack the queen. Okay, so white's actually blundered, it seems, quite badly with this b5. Can you see what black plays here if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? No one? Oh no. No one can see the move. Come on, come on, come on. Oh, come on. Bishop h3. Yeah. Bishop h3. Attacking the queen. Yeah. He's on g2. Yeah. Look at this. The queen can come to g4 later. Direct attack or what? Direct attack. Yeah. I know it's easy when you look at it now, isn't it? Oh. But surely this is quite straightforward. The knight is able to, in its last legs before being kicked away, protect the rook. Okay, so queen a3. And now very importantly, taking on d1 to leave a loose rook on d1. So that's a loose piece. And now we see queen g4. So we got a loose rook on d1 as well. Okay, and white crumbles now. Well, actually, what does white play here? What does white play here? He's losing the rook. It's a disaster. He plays knight e1, losing the rook. So queen takes d1. White's gone, hasn't he? G takes h3. Okay. Check. Yeah. So Tal's a rook up. He has fun now. I mean, I suppose he doesn't want to play too passively. I mean, knight d8 would be a bit reckless because queen f8 would be embarrassing. But no, he doesn't have to play knight d8 or knight a5. He plays knight d4 here. So that's nice. But he is a rook up. Okay. So after c takes, e takes, it's clear that bishop takes d4, check, we'll get the bishop. So bishop f4, the exchange up is enough, and he's got a massive passed pawn. Don't need to be too greedy sometimes in chess. So check, and the king's coming out to play here. So h5, and the king's being dragged out here. Queen d6. Okay, king h7, and now you see with king h7 there's a threat of g5 without this being check, so it makes g5 I think a little bit more effective to play king h7. Queen d7 is played. Okay, pinning the pawn, but rook e8. h4 is played. Check. And okay, the queen is on g4 here at the moment, but rook e1 is played, and it's here that white resigns, because not only queen g4, okay, that's defended, but queen e4, I expect, is slaughter time for the king. So here white resigned. So this was, I don't know, in some ways, this is very, very unexpected from the opening, because if we go and review the trump cards from the opening, it looked as though, I mean, I'm pretty sure we didn't imagine this, but it looks as though Tal gave up his dark square bishop, which you thought would be the premise for some sort of, maybe, well, he didn't even give it up on with the usual bishop c3. Okay, and you wouldn't think this is so dangerous, basically. So how did he get such an attack from very limited trump cards? Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. From very limited trump cards at the opening. How could it be so disastrous for the white king from here? It's a mystery. So it takes... Okay, I mean, also, what is this about inviting his king to be checked as well? It's like his opponent's pieces are going into, unfortunately, bad squares for white's own king safety. For some reason. I don't know, there's this case of over-optimism or something to get this position where it seems, superficially, I mean, black looks passive, so it looks as though queen d6 might be justified, driving the queen to c8. And so one wrong move and then it's all over really. b5 seems to be the wrong move, unless there's some amazing engine resource here which we don't know about. So bishop h3, blunder. What a huge blunder from white in retrospect. I mean, it's quite a simple discover the attack on the queen, and it also gives g4 for the queen, so he makes a loose piece first on d1 as well, and this is just all over. It's quite simple really if you look at it like this. But you know, knight d4 was quite clever as well. I mean, but he is a rook up. Okay, so you know, maybe Mark felt embarrassed a little bit by this game, but let's go on. So let's have a look at another game. So Anatoly Banik, not Anatoly Karpov, Anatoly Banik playing white. Okay. And d4 is played. Knight f6, knight f3. Dull, boring. No, solid. Okay, g6, g3. So this is going to be a solid system, surely, because in the Fianchetto King's Indian system, white's king is a little bit safer than usual. So what plan does Tal choose? He plays d6, and now knight c6. So Anatoly Banik against Tal, Moscow 1957. We're sticking to this tournament, this Russian championship in 1957. So knight c3, a6, standard sort of counterplay generation on c4. So bishop g5, rook b8. Bit of a difference now. Rook c1. White is geared up for b5. This might not be very wise here at all. So bishop g4 sort of targets maybe dark squares now. Queen d2, and Tal voluntarily gives up the light square bishop. And he's putting more pressure now on d4 with knight d7. White ignores that by playing, well, he can't, no, he's sort of indirectly defending against it. Knight d5 is on e7 himself now. So how can this knight be evicted without creating a weakness? Black really doesn't want to play f6, surely. He plays rook e8 for the moment. Bishop e3. And now e5. Okay, white takes. Black takes with a pawn. So he's keeping this square for his knight to be supported by the bishop and the pawn. Rook fd1. So we see now knight d4 threatening to double, if needed, white's pawns. But white moves that bishop out of the way. c6, kicking the knight back. Okay, queen e7. Okay, so here, okay, maybe white's, you might think white's okay here. Let's see, knight e4, knight f6, an exchange of knights. And white gets a little bit ambitious now, perhaps, with this next move, h4. H4. I think positionally, black looks to be in a nice way. Rook bd8, the queen gets out of the way. And now h5. Okay, so we see bishop d2. And it looks as though white is one step away from maybe playing e3 to kick the knight. Now e4 gives the f3 square now. If e3, we just maybe play knight f3, knight f3, pretty sure. So e4, white plays bishop a5. Seems a bit strange, bishop a5. What is white's plan actually? Okay, rook b8, bishop c3. It's being annoying for that knight on d4. That's protected again with this one. Now, so if bishop a5, we've got b6. So none of this annoyance anymore. Okay, so rook d2, which rook d2. Would you really play rook d2? Maybe this guy wasn't like a modern 2700 player, because rook d2 does seem to run into quite horribly e3. I'm not really sure what you guys think of this, but rook d2 doesn't it look as though you're asking for it if you play rook d2? I mean, it does to me. I don't know. It looks as though white wants to be smashed up with e3. I don't know. It doesn't look that hot to play rook d2 here. So e3 is played. Okay, and of course, you know, it looks good. And in fact, white crumbles now after this e3. You know, check. And there's a little tactic here which destroys white's position. Really. So can you guess what Mikhail Tal played here in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Yeah, allowing this e3 was bad news. I'm pretty sure knight takes e2 now is winning material. You know, because we've got a loose rook here on c1, so that's, loose pieces fall off, as we know. So rook e1. Now in this position, hold on a sec. Has Mikhail fallen into a horrible, devious trap in this position? Has he indeed? Because hang on a sec. There's a double attack on c1 and f6. Where does the queen go? Was the tactic as simple as we first thought? To play knight takes e2 check? Okay, I guess I could give you 20 seconds here to find a move. There aren't too many moves, otherwise I think, yeah. Okay, I think some of you have found it. Bishop takes c3 saves black's position and, well, keeps him in the winning position. Oh dear, oh dear. Because of this diagonal trying to win back the queen. Oh dear, oh dear. Poor white. So he's still material down here. He's a rook down, isn't he? Or the exchange. Okay, he's going to be. He's the exchange down. The exchange down. So he plays on a little bit. Okay, so we see the game carrying on. Okay, he's just playing on the exchange down. So a4. He's trying to do something with this bishop. Clearly, try and play for b5. Threatening to exchange off the rooks, that's stopped. b5 is played, so okay, white's still trying to get something from this position, but okay, here Tal just takes on b5 and plays rook b3, not minding an exchange of pawns there. Basically, rook c7, check, 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 check. And in this position, rook b5 now threatens mating. And after, so king f1, we see rook d2 again, renewing the threat of rook b1 to mate. And okay, so here white resigned. Actually, he's not just the exchange down; he's a pawn down as well. So okay, he resigned here. It was just, I don't know, just allowing e3 was a bit of a disaster. So perhaps not one of the strongest tournaments, one of the strongest opponents in this tournament, and Anatoly Banik. So yeah, he let himself in for the attack there. So he was under a bit of pressure positionally, and okay, but maybe, you know, he thought this was a brilliant tactical idea conjured up, that this position, you know, maybe he expected queen takes f2 or something, in which case white might not be in such a bad way at all. He would have the bishop pair, but you know, queen takes f2, you know, white's okay, isn't he? So so this was really crushing. Knight takes e2, so seemingly going into a problem, but the problem is illusionary here, that the queen and bishop is attacked, because he plays bishop takes c3, removing f6 as an issue, and then counterpinning white's queen, winning the queen back. And the rest is not so hard. The exchange up, just get rid of all the pawns, not minding that, and start to threaten mate. Okay, so white had enough there. Oh, that's an interesting little tactic. Okay, so it wasn't as easy as perhaps we imagined the tactic, because he had to sort of, the trapper became trapped, really. Okay, so let's have a look at another game. So Paul Keres was a really strong player for a number of years, the crown prince of chess, Paul Keres, and he was in this tournament and playing white against Tal. So let's have a look at this game. So d4, okay, and Tal again plays e6, and then we see Queen's Indian type territory, knight f3, c5. Paul tries to just play sensibly, e3, not minding for a moment his bishop being a bit blocked in, d5. Again, you know, central tension, interesting. a3, stopping any Nimzo Indian insertion of bishop. No, that's not going to happen. The pawn's on c5, forget that. a3 might be useful for d takes and b4 later, and bishop b2 might be. a3 is sometimes handy. So black plays c takes d4, e takes d4, bishop e7. Okay. So can white try and do something with a pawn majority maybe later anyway? Question. Let's see. Knight c3 after castles, bishop f4. There's a dark square grip here on e5. Knight c6. Okay, rook c1. And now we see knight e4. And that knight is just pressurized a little bit. And is black really doing white a favour with this next move, knight takes c3? Because now, you might think h7 looks a bit vulnerable. Why is Tal gone without his defensive knight? Okay, what's his idea here? And also, you know, this bishop seems a bit hemmed in. How can he possibly have these positions, which seem, you know, passive without any attacking trump cards? Isn't this quite strange? Well, you might ask. So d takes c4, rook takes c4 is played. But actually, the bishop potentially might have this diagonal. Might. So let's see what Tal does. So check. And now queen d5. Okay. So queen c2 does hit that vulnerable pawn straight off the bat. And maybe white's also threatening bishop e4, and maybe even, you know, useful pressure on c6. So he plays what normally you might consider an ugly looking move, f5, but it does stop white's use of e4. It does protect that pawn. Okay, white castles. We see bishop d7, rook d1, now rook ac8. Okay, and it looks as though maybe, you know, knight takes d4 could actually be a threat here against white's queen. Bishop e3 reinforces d4. Knight a5, which was made possible by that move, wasn't it? Bishop was eyeing a5 here, so a slight weakness of the last move, opportunity. Okay, what does white do with this rook? He takes on c8, but hasn't he just given black the c file for a moment? It looks as though black's in better shape than just a few moves back. Tal is controlling a lot of these light squares now. Bishop d6 compensates for the e5 being weak. But white here plays knight e5 anyway. Okay, so what on earth is that about? Knight e5. Let's see, in this position, black played bishop a4, hitting the rook. Let's just examine this for a moment. Bishop takes e5. Is this terrible? I guess it gives white something horrible. So queen takes. Well, this is loose for a start. I wonder if we just play bishop takes f5 here. That might be nice. Yeah, just on this. Okay, so Tal's choice bishop a4 gets that piece out. So maybe he is threatening bishop e5 now. So rook goes, and now he does take on e5. Indeed, d takes. Now, can black actually win this e5 pawn here? If queen takes e5 wasn't played, so why wasn't it played? Well, maybe this bishop takes a7, yeah, and then that's not so hot. Bishop takes a7, that might be good, for example. So again, okay, so instead rook d8, hitting the bishop. Okay, instead of moving the bishop, maybe white is in a little bit of trouble here actually, because if the bishop moves, haven't we got a resource here like bishop d1? I wonder, among other things. Interesting. What would you play in this position? If bishop b1 was played, bishop c6, even easier to threaten mate. Possibly. Okay. So white played b4, and we saw actually here bishop c6. Threatening mate, forcing a move like f3. So, and now an exchange of minor pieces. Queen takes, rook takes, pawn takes a5. And again, a7 is vulnerable, and it's opposite colour bishops now. So what is actually, is it so clear? So rook takes a3, bishop takes a7, rook takes a5. Okay. So he's got a pawn, he's a pawn up after all this, but it is opposite colour bishops here. So how can he make progress? How can black make progress? Rook a2, rook on the 7th, quite useful. Okay, so rook b1 and rook d2, attacking the bishop, rook c2. And then the king crawls up with king f7 and king g6. So is the king going to be marching up for the attack or something? So rook b4. We see h6. And now we see more simplification, and you might think, really, opposite coloured bishops, shouldn't that give black some drawing, sorry, shouldn't it give white some drawing chances here? Okay, but Mikhail goes for it, you know, he takes it. So we've only a pawn up here. King h5 does seem to be good for winning another pawn though. You know, if g3 we've got bishop takes f3, so it's 2 pawns up now. Whoops. Okay, so bishop f8, hold on a sec, only 1 pawn up now because white's winning that back. Okay, only 1 pawn up again, h5. This is an outside pass pawn though, how could it be used? Bishop h6. Ah, dear oh dear. Ah, dear oh dear. So can you guess what black plays here if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Black to play. Okay, yeah, forget this opposite colour bishop ending. There's a transition into a different sort of ending, where sometimes bishops are not good at surveilling past pawns, are they? So Tal plays bishop takes f3, leaving this pawn to sort of juggle all these past pawns everywhere. So let's see. And the king's very, very aggressive on f3 here. So we've got this one, we got this one, and we potentially got this one. So king f1. I'll start using the b pawn. Bishop tries to survey these criminals that should be kept under lock and key, as Nimzovich would say. So h4, another criminal steps forward. Bishop can't cope here. Bishop b4. h3. The king tries to rescue the situation over there. But now this is great. Oh dear, oh dear. The black king gets much more aggressive here with this next move. I wonder if you can spot this next move. What would you do here with black? It's the final move of the game. Can you guess? Okay. Yeah? Okay, some of you are saying king e4. I wonder if that's a blunder, actually, king e4. If you play king e4, don't you lose all your advantage to king h2? I just wonder. Or you might, maybe it is winning. Okay, but actually king e2 was played. He doesn't mind just using the f pawn here, it seems. White resigned here. But let's go with you know, king h2. Okay, you know, just f4. You know, how is the bishop going to cope here? We just play b4 here now, don't we? And you know, this bishop is overloaded. If we get this position, can distract the bishop. End of game. Okay, so the bishop's totally overloaded, basically. So that was that. So let's have a look at this game again. So that was quite interesting against Paul Cares. So what did we have? We had a seemingly passive black position, and he made h7 a bit looser that you might think would be comfortable, but instead he got the isolated queen's pawn to play on, and he didn't mind this f5 move, which normally would weaken fatally, you know, like e5 square, depending on the position. But here white's in no position to exploit e5. So maybe, you know, he's got a point here that the c file is going to be center of action soon, and it is. You know, it's very quick center of action. Once this rook goes here, we saw the c file being the major kind of feature of the position all of a sudden. and now bishop d6. Okay, and Tal wasn't tempted to win a pawn or anything. He kept the pressure with bishop a4. Okay, and he, after rook d8, it seems very difficult for white, and he is going down a pawn, and it's opposite colour bishops though might not seem that bad here. White was aiming for this opposite colour bishop maybe scenario where, okay, he's a pawn down, but it doesn't seem too terrible in principle, and even the rook's coming off. But I think we see here the importance of a very aggressive king in the endgame. So even though white's winning back a pawn, the king is so aggressive now that this bishop sack is supported by the king being so aggressive, and we have 3 passed pawns here to make use of. So that's good. There's no way the bishop's stopping them all. King e2 resigns. Okay. So let's go on to another game. So Gooden guys. Gooden guys. Yeah. So Gooden guys is, his name is associated with this G6 in the Slav, isn't it? Gooden guys. Is this the same one? Is this the famous Gooden guys? Bukati Gooden guys. Okay. So he was playing whites, of course. I'm just showing you black, Tal with black. So d4, and Tal plays knight f6. Oh, this is a corker, this game. Oh dear. c4, c5. Benoni. Okay, so this is definitely, in terms of the opening trump cards, which I mentioned at the start of the day, this for me is more clear cut for black getting aggressive possibilities, because okay, the Benoni is very aggressive dynamically, and structurally, you know, d6 is a problem, and it's looked down on a bit nowadays because of that d6, you know, Benoni, son of sorrow. Yeah, so okay, but you know, this is such an amazing game. Rook e8, and it looks as though white's sensible to play knight d2. So if once he protects e4, you know, knight c4, he can start probing d6, you'd think. Knight a6, rook e1, knight c7. So there might be some possibilities of black playing b5 here to try and distract a knight. So a4 puts a clamp on b5. No worries. b6, queen c2, and it's strange, really, sort of, that in this position, well, you know, a standard plan might be to slowly prepare b5. You can either try and use your queen side majority, or there's an alternative plan, it seems, to just play knight g4. Okay, so white doesn't really want to give up the light square bishop with bishop takes g4, although that might have been better than the game continuation. So he played actually now it looks as though, hang on, it looks as though maybe, you know, white is thinking here probably, oh, the idea must be to put a knight on e5. So just kick this knight, just casually kick the knight. But can you guess, I think I might have shown you this game before actually, can you guess what Mikhail Tal played here if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Yeah, now so the interesting thing about knight takes f2, yeah, is that in Benoni, you know, you do have good dark square control, don't you? So I would say the opening did have some of the trump cards, which makes knight takes f2 really work well. The dark square control, in particular, you know, white's just stepped out. You know, his king safety is being damaged. So we see check, and there's also a loose rook as a feature of the position here. So the king can't just crawl back because of that loose rook. Okay, so we see king f1. And now, you know, forcing moves really change the rapidly the position by force, of course. So this next forcing move, bishop d4, threatens immediately mate. So how does white parry that? There aren't really too many alternatives here for parrying the mate threat. White tries knight d1, and guess what black plays here? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. Actually, there's probably two moves at least, but maybe one's more crushing than the other. Okay, it seems that it's tempting to take on h3 with the bishop, but actually even better is probably the queen. Yeah. So we've still got this mate if taking, but the queen's also now got possibilities of queen h1 threatening mate here. So bishop f3 is played, giving the king an escape route. Okay, queen h2 now threatening to glide along those dark squares. You know, check, check. Maybe the king's going to come here, then, or once the king's on e2, we play bishop a6 check. That would be pretty nice. So the white king's in trouble anyway. So knight e3 is played. For the moment, white might be thinking he can secure c4 on this diagonal, but the centre is also vulnerable. So f5 is played. This is just looks impossible to defend this position. White's next move makes use of the c4 square, knight d4, but it looks like a huge task to defend this now. This diagonal is dangerous for the white king. I don't know, you know. These access paths to the king, they look so straightforward, and it looks as though we should be able to recreate stuff in our own games, but you know, it's much harder. It's much harder in your own games, I think. But so taking, and he plays bishop a6. Okay, so there's immediate threat of something surely now, like, well, queen h1 or rook takes e4 must be on the cards at some point. So we see bishop f3. But actually here, no need to do anything too radical. Just build up more pressure, rook e5. So if he wants, he can play this or this. You know, that would threaten taking potentially as well, if the queen's only protected by the knight. So what does he do here? Rook a3. We see actually rook a e8, putting up more pressure on e3. Okay. So bishop d2 is now played, and finally, okay, the pressure's reached its point where it's difficult to put more pressure on white, so perhaps it's time to do something more concrete now. So what's the concrete move played here, if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Anyone? Well, there seems to be actually a number of attractive alternatives. I wouldn't want to rule any out. I'll just show you what he played. He played knight takes d5. Okay, so clearly knight takes d5 is not possible. I think queen g1 is mate there. So rook, sorry, bishop takes d5 is check. Okay. Rook takes d5. So again, you know, if knight takes, then queen g1, and now rook f5 check is also threatened. So this is really bad news, really. King e2 is tried as a defensive try. Tal takes on e3, allowing the rook to come in. Bishop takes c4 check. And here white resigned, and it looks as though that d2 is a disaster here. If white resigned here, if queen takes c4, I think queen takes g2 check, because d2, the queen's just come off d2, hasn't it? So king d1, you know, queen takes d2. Pretty brutal. Now I'm pretty sure, you know, this game really did have the attacking trump cards from the opening, but the others were more mysterious. They didn't. He seemed to have passive positions, but I'm pretty sure, you know, he got a lot of aggressive, true attacking visual, you know, trump cards from this Benoni. The dark square control, you know, the pressure on the e file, and you know, the knight sack is like a trademark, isn't it? You know, give up a knight for couple pawns, it's only a knight, you know, so it's not like a bishop, so you know, it's fine. You know, knight takes f2, and the king's, you know, almost having to crawl. Well, it's already in trouble. The king's safety is just a major feature of this position. Forget positional play, it's all about getting, you know, resources around the king here, isn't it? All these fantastic resources are getting to the white king. So, and this diagonal is also, even b6 wasn't for a6 b5, no, it was for this bishop to be a part of the attack. So on that diagonal, so that was really, I think that's obviously white was, you know, crushed, and it was made to look easy, this one, wasn't it? So let's have a look at another one. Now, okay. Okay. So yes, now there's Dinov is one of my most popular videos on the channel. I think maybe some of you know about it. Positional Queen Sacrifice was a classic hit on the channel from this Metanov. So him and Tal actually, I think, became very good friends. Was it after this particular tournament that they became very good friends? So he became Tal's trainer and maybe helped him later win, you know, the World Championship. It might have been. Does anyone know that? I think I've got the Life and Games of Mikhail Tal here next to me, this book, and I should really have looked that up. But you know, I assume it maybe it was this tournament or an earlier tournament. But I think maybe they were already good friends. So let's have a look at this game. E4 from this Metanov, E6. Okay, so D4, D5, and Tal is playing into this winnower. Okay, so C5. Now Bishop D2 from this Metanov, Knight E7, and now white is collecting a dangerous dark square bishop potentially. At the moment it's hemmed in by its own structure. B6. Okay. Does the French defence fit in with Tal's style? Does this position fit in with Tal's style? I mean, I think we've seen Tal to be quite versatile from numerous positions already, so we might think, well, why not? So B4, Queen C7. Maybe the C file is going to be useful for black. Knight F3, Knight D7. Okay, so Bishop E2, and now more pressure on D4 with Knight C6. And white simply castles, black castles. And actually, you know, for the moment it looks as though white's kind of chilled out with the bishop on E2. Where is the attack going to be on black's king? He's kind of chilled out. He's just holding D4. It seems that's his main thing, just to hold the position for the moment. Okay. So b takes c5, b takes c5, and in fact here we see d takes c5. So he's relinquishing responsibility of the centre. And French defence players like to attack the centre, usually. So, but there's nothing to attack. So instead, White's going for central control, as Nimzovich would emphasise. You don't need occupation of the centre. Sometimes control of the centre is the key thing. And now after knight c takes e5, actually this bishop is livened up on this diagonal. These bishops are more valuable if the centre's open rather than closed. So knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and now immediately I think really Tal's on the back foot here because, you know, queen d4. Okay, it's pretty crude that the knight moves his mate. He supports it, but it's you know, White has the bishop pair, and this bishop, I know we've seen so many Tal light square bishops seemingly passive, and Tal getting an attack later. But okay, so f4 is played, knight c6, queen e3. Okay, and this might have been a missed opportunity in this position to try and maybe just get the bishop pair from, you know, just sack a pawn to get the dark square bishop, but it wasn't taken. You know, rook d8, maybe he'd just be a pawn down for not much. So, but White has that dangerous bishop pair. But I think this is a step too far now, what Tal plays. With White having the bishop pair, you don't want to sort of increase the number of weaknesses available. So e5 does sort of increase the number of weaknesses available. F takes, but you might think, well, hold on, the centre, this is really cool, you know, d4, bishop b5 is played, and this centre's kind of fragile, and a move like d4 might be answerable with queen e4 hitting c6. d4 wasn't actually played, instead bishop b7. But now queen g3, and this is still looking dangerous for e5. Okay, so rook d7, seemingly offering the opportunity to win a pawn, but it's not taken. Instead, White just prepares to double rooks. This looks very dangerous now. Rook e8, h3, bishop a8. So are these pawns actually going to be moving forward anytime soon? Bishop a4 unleashes now the possibility of this bishop on that very dangerous diagonal. So bishop b7, king h1, bishop a8, waiting for White to do something. Okay, so rook f5, and finally the pawn goes forward now, offering the exchange of queens. And actually White's also going to be winning a pawn, so he goes for that. He takes Tal's queen and he wins this pawn. So has Black got something with this pawn here, you might think? Well, he does push it, but rook d7, and now g7's under fire. But surely, hold on a sec, there's e2 in this position. Unfortunately, well, it's pretty bad for Black's king safety this position because of check here. This is now quite painful, because if king f8 or king h8, then bishop takes g7 as mate. So Okay, so Tal's on the receiving end. Basically, he plays rook e6. That's taken. Bishop takes g7, and Tal resigns. Yes, Tal got smashed in this game. He did have a couple of losses in this tournament, and this was one of them. He got completely smashed. It happens to the best of us. But this is on the channel. So, if king e8, then bishop f7 is mate. You can't give your opponent, who's also a really dangerous attacking player, the two bishops like this, clearly. So, yeah, he got smashed. But, nevertheless, Tal did overall very well in the tournament. He scored 14 out of 17. No, 14 out of 21 in the final. So only 2 losses, I think. And we'll look at the white pieces next week. But this guy and Nesmetanov, I think they became very good friends. They had a very similar playing style. So maybe that makes for a good relationship. And I refer to him as Tal's trainer usually. So there's quite a few Nesmetanov videos on the YouTube.com Kingscrusher channel. A positional queen sacrifice one, if you do a YouTube search, is the best one. But if it's like he's like a more aggressive version of Tal, this Nesmetanov. But maybe didn't have opportunity or something, or some sort of more well-rounded style. Not particularly sure. But he seems very, very dangerous attacking player as well as Tal. For a moment here, it looks as though what is going on here. But bishop a4 is forcing black to do something. d5 is now going to come under fire. So both of these pawns are now vulnerable. King h1 gets out of the way of any tactics maybe on c5 to do with checks or anything. So it's a bit of prophylaxis there before the final, before the storm sets in. So rook f5 also kind of puts on more pressure. So e4, yeah, it doesn't really help e4 here. So he goes down a pawn, plays for e3, but his king's just in a bad way here. Check. It's all over. Okay. But yeah, okay, that was a bit of a painful one to end on. So I hope you enjoyed this week. I'll be uploading this to YouTube, but check out Nesmetanov games on the channel as well. So but no, next week I think I'd like to cover the games as white in this tournament of 1957. Comments or questions on YouTube or here? Okay, until next week, thanks very much.